All right, guys. So I haven't done a YouTube video in a little bit. I actually have my Final Destination Bloodlines out of the theater reaction edited. It's actually ready to go. I just haven't uploaded it yet because I've been so busy. Had to work Friday and Saturday, and then today I just took the day to relax. Today I watched. I spent the entire day just catching up on TV shows that I haven't had time to catch up on. I finally caught up on Andor season 2, and then I watched the newest episode of The Last of Us, which, real quick, because most of this is going to be about Andor season 2. Real quick about The Last of Us, best episode of the entire show by far. This most recent episode of The Last of Us is the best episode of the entire show by far. Masterpiece in storytelling, in writing, in acting. Beautifully well done. Cinematography, just music, editing, everything about that episode was pitch effing perfect. Love that episode. I 100% do believe it's the best episode of the entire show by far. Okay. And I know a lot of people are going to disagree with that because I've already heard people complaining about it on the internet, but I don't care. I will die on that hill. I'll die on that hill if I have to. But I gotta talk about Andor season 2 because if you guys have seen my videos or if you guys have heard me on the podcast, you guys know I have been very critical about Disney Star Wars lately. I think they've how do I say this? I think they've been a little hit and miss. I thought Ahsoka started out great. Went out on a whimper. I thought Obi-Wan started out great. Had some really great moments. Well, overall wasn't that great. Book of Boba Fett I thought was absolute garbage. Acolyte I think is the absolute worst thing that Disney Star Wars has ever put together. Obviously The Rise of Skywalker is the worst movie that they've ever made. Solo: A Star Wars Story is terrible. So I saw the first season of Andor and I fell in love with it instantly because it just felt like Star Wars. It felt like a good mixture of the original trilogy with the prequels, with a little bit of episodes of the Clone Wars. There's a little bit of that dark edge that was in Clone Wars in there too. There's a little bit, even though Clone Wars, yes, was fun for kids, there was a little bit of dark edge in Clone Wars, and you got a lot of that in Andor season, in the first season of Andor. Andor season 2 is incredible. Andor season 2 is incredible. Now, do I think it's better than Andor season 1? I wouldn't say it's better than Andor season 1, but it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. Specifically the final 3 episodes. You know, don't get me wrong. All the other episodes are fantastic. The other chapters, the other arcs are great. But specifically those final 3 episodes, man. Between the episode of Luthen and Clea, and you get that whole backstory, and then the way it ends. By the way, that episode with Luthen and Clea might just be my favorite episode of the entire show, period. Because that episode was just so masterfully done. The way they would cut back and forth between the backstory and the present day, and then the way it ends with her with an older Clea going into that room and just pulling the plug. Because even though she doesn't want to do it because she loves Luthen so much, she knows that's what he would want, you know? And it sucks because Luthen was my favorite character in the show, and they killed him, and it sucks. I love this character, and I'm so mad that they did that. But you know what? I understand why they had to do it. Episode 11 was fantastic. And then the finale happened. And the finale is one of the greatest pieces of television I've ever seen, ever put to screen. It really is. It legitimately is. Like I said, much like what I said about The Last of Us episode 6, season 2 episode 6, the writing in this episode, in this finale of Andor season 2 is so incredibly smart. Because one of the things that Andor season 2 didn't do, because Star Wars has always had a how do I say this? They are, and even George Lucas has said this about Star Wars, because Star Wars is it was originally intended for children. So lately Star Wars has kind of been making their content more wide appeal for a new generation to come in. You know, that's why the sequel trilogy is not as good as, you know, for like example. That's why people who grew up with the original trilogy didn't like the prequels. People who grew up with the prequels didn't like the sequels. You know, that's why Mandalorian is getting a lot of flack right now, because Mandalorian is taking a lot of Mandalorian, Ahsoka, all these shows. They're being adapted by Dave Filoni, who has more of an animation mind of things, and you know does and brings a lot of animation tropes to live action, which animation doesn't translate well into live action. But with Andor season 2, they really went out of their way. Tony Gilroy went out of his way to actually make a Star Wars show for adults. This is not a kid's show whatsoever. Like if I had kids, I would not show them this show, because it's not a kid's show whatsoever. Yes, it's Star Wars, and yes, there's ships, there's TIE fighters, and yes, there's, you know, but it is an adult show. There's mature subject matters in this show. Yes, there may not be, you know, Game of Thrones level violence or Game of Thrones level sex and nudity, but there's some mature subject matters in there. By the way, first 3 episodes of the show, there's, I think in episode 3, it's episode 3. There is an attempted, there's a scene where an Imperial officer attempts to sexually assault somebody. What? Never thought I would see that in a Disney Star Wars show. You know, let alone one that literally streams on Disney Plus of all streaming services. But the point I'm trying to make is that this show does not. It's not a show aimed at children. It is a show that is written as an adult show, but in the Star Wars universe. Yes. Does it have TIE fighters? Yes. Is it full of action? Absolutely. But it is intense. It is psychological. And I know some people will watch it and go, oh, Andor's so boring. Andor is so boring. If you think Andor is boring, then you obviously are just like, and also I've heard people say that Andor doesn't feel like Star Wars. What are you talking about? This is the most Star Warsy show that Disney has ever made. Aside from Mandalorian, which is the most Star Warsy show. Actually, well, I mean, Mandalorian kinda, but even Mandalorian feels more like a Western. Less, it doesn't really feel like a. Yes, it is a Star Wars show because it has a lot more of the Star Wars tropes than Andor does, but Mandalorian definitely is more of kind of like a Western. You know, it's way more of a Western than it is a Star Wars kind of feel that it's trying to go for. You know, and I loved it. I loved, And don't get me wrong, I love Mandalorian. Well, at least the first two seasons of Mandalorian. I love the first two seasons of Mandalorian. Season 3, not so much, but I love the first two seasons of Mandalorian. I actually really enjoyed Skeleton Crew. I was actually surprised with Skeleton Crew. I was actually surprised with how much I liked Skeleton Crew. But I just think Andor is the best thing that Disney has ever done, that Star Wars has ever put out since being bought by Disney. Don't get me wrong, you guys know how much I love The Last Jedi. You guys know how much I love The Last Jedi. I've literally died on that hill as well of being one of the only people on the planet that thinks that movie's a masterpiece, but yeah, everybody else, a lot of other people in the world hate that movie. For some reason, everyone hates that movie. But if I had to say it, I think Andor is better than The Last Jedi. I think Andor is the greatest piece of Star Wars storytelling, piece of Star Wars media that Disney has ever put out. And look, as much as we want to say that, you guys know, I do think Kathleen Kennedy needs to go. I don't think Kathleen Kennedy should be running Lucasfilm anymore. But Tony Gilroy recently came out and said, without her, this show doesn't exist. I'll tell you one thing. I'm actually on his side on this one. I don't think this show would have been made if George Lucas was in charge of Lucasfilm. I don't think this show makes it through. I don't think this show ever gets on the air. You know, if any other Dave Filoni single-handedly was in charge of Lucasfilm, which, yes, Dave Filoni has some creative power over there at Lucasfilm, but if Dave Filoni was single-handedly in charge of Star Wars, of Lucasfilm, there's no way this show happens. No way this show happens. This is the greatest piece of Star Wars storytelling that Disney has ever put out. It's a masterpiece. Andor is the greatest Star Wars. You know what? F it. I'll say it right now. This is the greatest Star Wars TV show ever made. Yes, it's better than Clone Wars. Yes, it's better than Mandalorian. Yes, it's better than Star Wars Rebels. It blows every single piece of Star Wars television out of the water. It's the greatest Star Wars TV show of all time. And that is a hill that I am willing to die on. I know, I've said I'm willing to die on a lot of hills, but that's one of them. That is one of them. But yeah, I know I'm shaking this camera a lot, but that's because I'm jazzed about this. I really am. I normally, the thing is that I haven't really been doing videos about TV shows, mainly because TV shows are more like my side hobby. There's things that I like to do when I'm not watching movies, because watching movies have almost felt like work. But I couldn't help it. When I watched Andor Season 2, and I saw this most recent episode of The Last of Us, I couldn't help but think to myself, TV is on an absolute high note right now. We are in a really great spot in television right now. There's so much good stuff out there. And yes, Andor just ended. Yes, Andor is over. Sadly, unfortunately, we're never going to get another season of Andor, and that breaks my heart. But that being said, it's still amazing to think that we got this amazing piece of television, and we're only halfway through the year. We're not even halfway through the year, because we're only in May. We're almost halfway through the year, because we got Peacemaker Season 2 coming out in August. Yeah, and I'm sure there's a bunch of other TV shows that are coming this year that I am surely forgetting about, um, but yeah, that's gonna do it for me on this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. My out of the theater reaction for Final Destination Bloodlines is gonna go up. Don't worry, it's going to go up. Please be patient. I'm going to put it up. I'm actually going to be putting up a lot of videos. In fact, my MCU reviews are going to start back up pretty soon here too, because I want to start those reviews back up before we get to Fantastic Four. I want to at least catch up before we get to Fantastic Four. So we're gonna continue with that. But that'll do it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Peace out.